Welcome everybody to a conversation with the win-loss pros at Qualtrics. I was excited for this session and then even more so when I found out a conversation was going to be my conversation. I'm here with Rachel Barker, Head of Product Launches at Qualtrics, and Monique Edelton, Head of Competitive Intelligence. Why don't I just give a minute for each of you to introduce yourselves?
Great. Monique, I'll go first. Is that okay?
Sure, yes.
Awesome. So I'm Rachel. I've been at Qualtrics about 7 years. Most of that time I spent in product marketing, helping us launch solutions for our employee experience product line. Now I work with both our product marketers and our product managers, managing our primarily our large launches that go to market and working through the go-to-market motions that have to happen to make great product launches. That's a little about me.
Awesome. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Monique Edelton. Everyone calls me Mo. But I've been at Qualtrics for about 6 months now, and I lead our global competitive intelligence organization. Well, organization of one, but our global intelligence function. And I'm building the program from the ground up here at Qualtrics. So I'm really excited, just monitoring our competitors, tracking their strategies, and learning all that we can about the marketplace so that we can improve our product services for our customers.
Okay, perfect intros. And I think what makes this such a good conversation, at least for me, is I've gotten to work with both of you really closely. Monique, we've worked together more recently as you stepped into Qualtrics, and I've gotten to see how much experience you bring. Rachel, you actually don't know this, but prior to me even joining Closed, one of the first pieces of content that I looked at on win-loss was you giving a webinar talking about your insights. So
great.
This really goes back. The first question that I would have to both of you, just to open format, is how do you use win-loss insights in your respective roles? What value does it contribute?
Monique, you jump in first and I'll follow.
Sure. I've been using win-loss information in my role across a number of companies for about 15 years now. It's one of the most invaluable programs that companies can run for a myriad of reasons. I find that it provides just invaluable insight into our customers, their perspectives, their motivations, and their challenges that really drive their buying decisions. It's helpful for us to understand the context under which they're evaluating solutions and ultimately, what's driving those buying decisions. Within competitive intelligence specifically, it really helps us to understand the broader competitive landscape, the key and emerging competitors, and how we're being perceived by our customers versus those competitors, our strengths, our weaknesses, and most importantly, our differentiators in the eyes of our customers. So that's really, how win-loss is contributing to our competitive intel function.
That's great. And I think if you're lucky enough to be in an org where you work with a Monique and have her expertise as a product marketer, we draw on both her and all the other areas where she may be gathering some of that intelligence, as well as the win-loss interviews. Before we had Mo in our org, as a product marketer, I would oftentimes go into the system to look for competitive intel, but all other sorts of things. So any signals that were helping us build a go-to-market motion. And as a product marketer, for me, a lot of the time, those different signals were coming both as anecdotes to help others in the organization understand and be brought along in a product launch, or oftentimes you were going in and saying, well, let's look at an organization of a certain size and see what they say and compare it to someone else who fits in a different demographic, be it industry or org size, whatever that may be. So it was a good tool to go and help build strategy for product launches, but also to look and say, how do we compare some of our customer segments? And how do we get more open text, free-flowing insights that maybe our data doesn't say as colorfully or, shine such a bright light on? So that's how I used it as a product marketer.
Yeah, you're starting to touch on this next question a little bit, but when you do try to get win-loss information, what type of information are you looking for?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think there's all kinds of things, which is part of what win-loss does, because it's not really boxed in a certain area, right? If I'm going and looking at usage data, that's only telling me about the usage, but I can use a win-loss tool or survey or whatever it may be to get more open text things. So for me, I'm looking at what type of customer is this? If we're looking at the why, they may or may not have purchased or not purchased a solution. Oftentimes I'm getting in there and saying, okay, well, I'm looking for things like, was it the product? Was it the sales motion? Was it the price? You know, there's all sorts of details that you can look at in aggregate often when you're looking at dashboards. I love dashboards. At Qualtrics, Mo, I assume you're in that same boat. But having that text-rich, you know, the texture essentially to a lot of that information is what I'm looking for. So yeah, the list could go on and on, but a lot of demographic things, a lot of purchase reasons. Oftentimes with those win-loss, we're even validating or sorting off of size of company and a lot of customer profile type information. What else would you add, Mo?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that, to your point, Rachel, there's so many sources internally that tell us the what, right? Like what customers are buying, maybe even how often they're using a product, and the types of customers that we have. What I love about win-loss is that it gives us insight into those customers we don't have, right? So there is that loss side of the house and really understanding where are we losing customers in that process. Are our products not meeting their needs? Is our messaging not resonating? Are there competitors out there that are positioning themselves in a certain way? Why are we missing those opportunities with certain customers? And then also with the ones that we do have, it really provides why they chose us. Why are they coming to the table? What was so great about what we presented? So I love the fact that we can really dig into the why behind all of the activity that we're observing during the sales cycle. And Rachel, as you mentioned, it gives us, product insights, land competitor insights, the whole experience, the whole buyer experience as well. So it covers a gamut of really key areas that make the difference between a customer coming on board or not, which is really important.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. Both of you talked a lot about getting in underneath the why and having so much broad information. And that's a large part of like what Qualtrics really excels in. So really, like, how do you see win-loss fitting in with that, like helping you achieve your own mission?
Yeah, I think what we do, and Monique, you can speak to this process, is oftentimes we're looking really distinctly at specific deals. So we, of course, run surveys and feedback mechanisms across our sales cycle. So this is just another arrow in the quiver, I would say, for go-to-market strategy, for product planning, for whatever things we're doing internally into Qualtrics to create better customer experiences and better products. But I would say that this gives open text and a more in-depth personal touch. When your team at close goes in and actually gets on the phone with someone, we get a really rich response that may not always come through the Qualtrics platform. So for me, that's sort of how I think about this is just another arrow in the quiver.
Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. I will totally echo that in terms of, when we look at the close program specifically, it is part of a broader win-loss program that we have, and we are continually evolving here at Qualtrics. So we do have other parts to it. We have our internal surveys that we're sending out to customers, and we are also analyzing our CRM data as well. Our CRM data is interesting in that it gives us that voice of sales. So it kind of gives our internal point of view, right? So we have the sales teams telling us what happened in a particular opportunity and maybe the reasons why they think we lost a deal, competitors involved, et cetera. And then we can use our surveys and the closed interviews as a pressure check to say, did we really fully understand what was happening in these opportunities? It really gives us that 360 view of what's happening throughout the sales experience. So being able to marry multiple input channels together to produce kind of this broader program has been really, really valuable for us.
Yeah, I think that's actually just an awesome vision of what best-in-class win-loss looks like. It's all of these different pieces, and you have a rich understanding through all these data points and surveys that give you a good insight into what's happening in the business. And now use win-loss to go deeper, get like that deep 360 view. And maybe something that would help us understand like what win-loss provides is to imagine what your role looks like without win-loss. Specifically, let's start with product marketing. For you, Rachel, what does your role look like without win-loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think Monique hit this on the head that win-loss is part of this larger strategy. And so I think what you can really come down to is it just takes maybe more time to go get some of these insights. I spend a fair amount of time on calls with customers, but especially when you've lost a deal, trying to get that person back engaged with the seller or the person they've been engaging with makes a lot of sense, that they have an easier time, but then trying to get me on the phone, it takes a long time to get that kind of insight circulated inside of an organization. So it comes down to time and effort for me that yes, we could maybe go get a lot of this information in other channels, or we have smoking guns in other channels where we can go dig up more information. But the win-loss tool that centralizes it helps us to not keep it just centralized, but also help socialize it across the org. So that's the big area for me that just streamlines my efforts to get customer insights so I can build better go-to-market strategies.
That's interesting.
I would just add from a competitive perspective, it really helps us from not chasing shiny objects and being distracted a lot of times by competitive activity. So it's really easy to get a little bit of it in a frenzy when competitors do things like launching a new product or a new partnership or some sort of snazzy announcement. Some companies are just really great marketers and make everything that they do sound so amazing. And I think without win-loss, we might be chasing our competitors' actions, like, oh, well, maybe we need a partnership like that as well, or should we be going off and developing this new whiz-bang feature over here? Without win-loss providing us that voice of customer that lets us know whether that new feature or partnership is actually relevant, would they pay for it, is it interesting, is it helpful? Without having that kind of context, I think we would be a little bit more distracted by all of the activity that's taking place in the marketplace.
That's really interesting. So it's kind of like, man, it really bugs me that Acme Corporation keeps launching these rocket shoes. But let's go talk to some customers and we'll find out that they're really just crashing all our customers into a wall. And it just doesn't work.
Exactly.
Okay. Monique, you talked a little bit about some of the other sources that you use, like CRM data, surveys. Is there any other source of information that you use to combine win-loss data to make strategic decisions?
So outside of the surveys that we're doing for win-loss, as well as the CRM data that we have, yeah, there's tons of other sources that we use. We look online, we use online reviews, for example, where customers are providing feedback on different products. We talk to sales. We definitely utilize our internal folks to provide that voice of sales and what the experience is in deals and what do they believe is resonating with customers. We actually talk with our partners a fair amount as well to get their perspective as they're partnering with us on opportunities to give more insight into what they think is working, what's not working, from positioning, offering perspective. So yeah, there's a myriad of sources that we're combining together that contribute to that whole win-loss analysis.
That's great. From your side, Rachel, is there anything else that you're using to help inform your product launches?
Monique nailed a lot of them. And as she knows, we come to her and say, what can you give us first? Because she's doing a lot of that work. But what we'll do is oftentimes have what we would refer to as a customer advisory board. So depending on the questions we're asking, right? Do I want to know about whether this sales pitch is working? I'll go to a sales advocate or a seller. If the partnership positioning works, I'll ask a couple partners. But really at the end of the day, what we want to know is, are customers engaged with the solution, or are they interested in buying? Where can we learn from them? So we rely on our customer advisory board, as well as customer relationships that we've built both through our frontline teams or anything we do in marketing or product to get insights from them. We run a preview program, when we launch products. So we get a lot of customers coming through there. And as much as we can, we love our customers to be involved in any aspect of Qualtrics. So I'd say that's really the big one. If we can go to that source, we love to. And with win-loss, when we can't, when they're not yet a customer, we'll turn to win-loss.
That's cool. And now looking to the future, what's next for the win-loss program?
Yeah, I would say the next step for us for close specifically, one initiative that we're getting underway is really starting to be more strategic in how we utilize the interviews. So starting to focus more on themes rather than just doing win-loss interviews across just any deals that come across our desk. So each quarter we're meeting to determine what are the specific areas we want to dig a little bit more deeply into? Like, did we release a new product and we want to get feedback on that? Have we put a new sales motion in place and we might want to get some feedback on that? Is there a strategic initiative underway? So that's really what we're looking to do, is really look into developing those themes and digging a little bit more deeply into them. That way we can really start to trend our qualitative win-loss data. We're also revamping how we're communicating the findings with our sales teams. So being more proactive about sending that individual opportunity feedback directly to the teams. We're also collecting that feedback from them on those deals as well. So for each specific closed deal that's published to our portal, we're including feedback from the deal team as well to provide that context on the deal, and then learnings, whether it was a win or a loss. What did we learn from this experience? Did we put a new particular sales motion in place, or did we, was there a different way we could have approached the sales experience? So really incorporating that feedback into the overall close report has been something that has been received really well internally. So we're going to be doing that a lot more. And then I would say the third area where we really want to dig more deeply into is trying to determine how we replicate this process for our global teams. Qualtrics is a global organization. We have teams in Latin America, in EMEA, and APJ, and all of those teams are also really hungry for this type of in-depth feedback from our customers. So really trying to find a way that we can replicate the program across our teams globally is a high priority for us as well.
Yeah, I would just add too, and Monique's touched on a lot of things that I think are interesting for anyone tuning in to Win Last Week, which is at various stages of company growth, your program is going to look very different. I've been at Qualtrics for what I feel like is a long time in tech years. They're kind of like dog years, I always say. And early on, a lot of this wasn't as centralized. We were doing this as a sometimes reactive of, we just launched this thing, we want to know about this. How do we go get some of those insights? And now as we've scaled, a lot of what we're trying to do is say, how do we prioritize what feedback we look for? Or how do we prioritize what insights we know we need? And that requires a lot of internal coordination around global teams or product teams. So I think for product marketers to think about what can we get from some of these sales deal win-loss feedback pieces, it's, well, what are we most needing when it comes to executing our future strategy across product and across launches and go-to-market messaging? And how do we work with a team like Mo's to ensure that, as she's planning for that, we have a little bit of a voice in that. So I think it also requires some good planning internally, depending on where you are in your stage of company growth.
Yeah. One thing I want to add too is that we're not only using these interviews on the front end of our process, we are also conducting these interviews at the renewal stages as well, and really trying to understand for those customers that churn, the drivers behind the churn. So, it's great. We have a full program on the front end, trying to optimize the buyer experience and, trying to optimize our sales teams and tools and give them the right amount of support. But then at the renewal stage as well, we really want to understand, what we could have done a little bit differently in particular relationships in order to keep those customers. So I just want to point out that, I know we're calling it win-loss, but there's a huge churn element to the program as well. And, one could also argue that, keeping a customer is way more valuable than trying to go out and get, 3 new customers in their place. So really focusing on that renewal point in time and understanding and kind of doing that look back. And we've been able to save some customers throughout that program and learn some great things that we can put in place in order to improve our retention numbers. I mean, we have really good retention rates at Qualtrics. So we don't have a ton of customers that churn, but every little bit that we can learn to just further chip down that churn number is just invaluable to us as well.
I think what you just added on there about how important it is to understand all those little touch points.
Yeah.
It goes to show why Qualtrics really defines experience management. That's sort of what we're talking about, is what it takes to really plug into that entire customer journey lifecycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Rachel, I think also your insights touch on how to use win-loss at a lot of different levels of maturity, from beginning to later to now as you're more mature and you're focusing on prioritization. So as we've taken in all these things, like, are there any other last bits of advice that you would offer to people who are starting to think about win-loss, or maybe we should say win-loss renewal?
Yeah, I was going to say, I can think of quite a few stories or times when something we saw in our win-loss data or customer feedback data changed the direction a deal, or to your point, a renewal has gone, because we get insight from a customer, from a prospect that we weren't getting on a sales or a customer success call, despite how great our sellers and our CSMs are, and they really are. They'll put on the white glove for everything that they possibly can. There's just something about having that third party come in and do that. So I'd say, like, take advantage of that. Know that your customer wants to give you insights. They want a great experience, and utilizing all those channels you can to get those feedback pieces, whatever they look like, whether it's usage data or win-loss data, experience data, as Qualtrics comes in and does quite a bit. Thinking about how you can create that holistically, because you will probably have a little bit of an incomplete view if you don't leverage all those channels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add that, to just be intentional how you select the audience for your win-loss program. It's really important to be able to do enough of whatever you're doing, whether that's surveys, whether that's interviews, do enough of them so that you can start to see the trends across the deals, so that you can really start drawing those insights. Oftentimes companies kind of dip their toe into win-loss, or pick one strategic deal here or another strategic deal there. And then it's often really hard to connect the dots across opportunities to understand where there are opportunities for improvement in the experience, or to identify what's working really well in the organization, because that's also a great outcome of a win-loss program as well, is to identify, hey, where are we really, doing really well in this process? So just be intentional, perform enough of them. And our CRM program drives is really the heartbeat of win-loss. It provides us the overview of all of the deals. It provides us the contact information, which is super important when running any win-loss program. So getting as clean data as possible, the highest quality data as possible into your core CRM system is a priority in having a great win-loss program, so that you have the right data that you're using to select the audience, to contact the audience, and to get that feedback back from them as well. So I'm just a huge proponent of trying to make sure that that data is clean. And then lastly, I would say just having great buy-in from the sales organization. Once you start turning around those insights to the sales organization, because oftentimes sales might be a bit reluctant to enter into a win-loss program. They think that you're trying to check up on them to see, is it a report card on, how well they're doing or not well they're doing during the sales process. But once it's really positioned as a tool for educating the sales teams, arming them with the right language that customers are using, during the process, arming them with the differentiators against competitors in the marketplace and really understanding the key stakeholders and their needs, getting that information to them on a consistent basis, they become one of the biggest proponents for the program, which is just awesome because you really want that great partnership with sales and account management for any effective win-loss program. So those are just some bits of advice that I would pass along to anyone who's starting a program or continuing to evolve their program.
One more thing too that I would add for someone who, Monique is looking at that 360 view of the whole program. I'm someone in the org that kind of takes from all the good work that comes out of a win-loss program. And I would say, as the consumer of that insight, internally at least, be consistent, right? I think sometimes we do a lot of, oh, I'll check in on it when I need it kind of thing. But one of the things I've loved is at Qualtrics, we set up alerts. So for the product lines I work on, or for the specific areas I look on, if there's tags or relevance for my role, I get alerted. And then I'm consistently looking at those as they come in, instead of reactively looking at them as they're relevant to what I need, right? You can always find data to support what you want to say, versus, hey, I'm getting this holistic, consistent view to inform my ongoing work. I think is also another important way to think about win-loss as you consume that data.
I love these insights. I feel like you've tied it all together, from formulation to execution, and just the full view on two sides of the coin. It doesn't need to be said, but we just heard from two of the absolute best in the business at what they do, from one of the best companies at what they do. Is there any last advice that you would give from just any broad perspective?
Have fun. I actually think when I get win-loss insights in my inbox from Monique's team or from Closed, I think, oh, fun, a nice break for me to just learn about things. You also get to see some of the unfiltered or, non-polished phrasings and things like that. And that can be fun. So I think have fun. Think of this as we used to say this a lot at Qualtrics, feedback is a gift.
Yeah.
And you would say it in context of giving feedback and receiving it from your colleagues, but I think that's true of your customers and your prospects as well. So have fun and think of feedback as a gift. That'll be my parting thought.
Yeah, I would just say use it. So many times we're out there collecting all of this information, and customers are, if they've taken the time to answer a survey or to sit on the phone for 30 minutes and give all of their feedback on a particular process, then use it. Like, it's so, like Rachel said, feedback is a gift. So just be sure to, really incorporate it into your actions and strategies going forward.
Don't be surprised if the next time you see me, my t-shirt just says Closed. Have fun, use it.
Right. Exactly. That's perfect.
Okay, well, thanks to both for being with us. I think we learned a lot. This is going to be great.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having us.